So let's talk about JoJo Siwa and the reasons for her hair loss.
Figured I would just explain this. So no, it's actually not from the ponytails, because if it was from my ponytails, considering it went on this side, it would be this, because this didn't really get pulled at all. This, oh my gosh, this hair right now, it's awkward length, ignore it. But this is because when I was little, you can see I actually have a little bit of one right now, but when I was little, I had a really bad stress rash right here on Dance Moms, and I would pick at it all day long, and I damaged every single hair follicle that has ever been right there.
I think there are 3 possible causes of JoJo Siwa's hair loss. Let's go through each of them. The first is traction alopecia, because of the tight hairstyles that she had in putting her hair into a ponytail. The problems typically start in childhood with traction alopecia, and they could be reversible at this stage. The early signs of the disease are non-scarring and reversible, but the chronic form of traction alopecia is actually more permanent and can lead to scarring of the tissues by the hair. The hair loss can occur at any part of the scalp depending on the configuration of the hairstyle itself. The pathophysiology is that excessive pulling forces lead to mechanical damage of the hair follicles by inducing an inflammatory response. Traction alopecia was first detected in Greenlandic Inuit women. So in 1907, this condition was actually labeled Alopecia Greenlandica because of specifically this community in Greenland where people were found to have traction alopecia or some form of it because of the tight hairstyles. For JoJo, I know that she mentioned that she used to wear her ponytails in a different direction where more of the left side of her head would be impacted. But what I saw in some of the clips that I caught through some of the YouTube videos was that she did in fact at times wear the hair straight back, and that could have resulted in potentially some pulling on that right sided temple to give her some degree of hair loss in that location. The second possible cause of hair loss for JoJo Siwa is stress-induced telogen effluvium. We know that JoJo has had an illustrious career at a very young age, and that can be very stressful.
She deserves nothing. Don't have an attitude that you are entitled in this world. You are not. You deserve nothing else. You earn it. You can't stand here and cry. I want no crying children. None.
Well, if you yell at me, I'm gonna cry.
Get out. Go. Okay. Go.
We also know that stress can trigger hair loss. It's usually temporary, but how does that happen? So this explanation long evaded us until there was a study published in 2021 in the journal Nature, which is one of the most prestigious journals in all of literature, and the study came out of Harvard. So the researchers began by testing the role of the adrenal glands, which produce key stress hormones, corticosterone in rodents and cortisol in humans. By removing the adrenal glands from mice, they found that there were rapid cycles of hair regrowth. Hair follicle regeneration didn't slow as these mice grew older, but it did in control mice. The team was able to restore the normal hair cycle by feeding the mice corticosterone. Then, subjecting mice to mild stress over many weeks increased corticosterone levels and reduced hair regrowth. Hair follicles remained in an extended resting phase, which is what we think of when we think of telogen effluvium. So essentially, stress hormones can cause reduced hair growth, and this could be another explanation for JoJo Siwa's hair loss. Another potential explanation for JoJo's hair loss is trichotillomania. This is known as a hair pulling disorder. Trichotillomania is part of the obsessive compulsive disorder category, and it's thought to be largely related to anxiety disorders. It tends to have a very cyclical nature in that a person feels stressed, they pull the hair, the stress goes away, and thus the alleviation of the stress will actually reinforce the behavior of the hair pulling. It first starts as a non-inflammatory, non-scarring alopecia, where there is follicular damage due to the external insult of pulling the hair out. With chronic traumatic insult, though, this non-scarring condition eventually can result in scarring, leading to potentially permanent hair loss. The treatment for trichotillomania is usually cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, habit reversal training, and sometimes even antidepressant medications. So what should JoJo Siwa do to restore her hair, if that's even a goal for her? Well, the most important thing is to reduce the behaviors that led to the hair loss in the first place. And that will include wearing more relaxed hairstyles and not pulling or picking at the hair. Our first goal with hair loss is always to try to figure out what the underlying cause is and if it's potentially reversible, to address that first. She can also consider some medical therapy such as topical Rogaine, platelet-rich plasma injected into the area of concern, as well as low-level laser light therapy, which we have covered on this channel. If there's no regrowth after 1 year, JoJo can also consider getting a biopsy, which would be a punch biopsy of the scalp in the area of concern, usually right at the junction between where the area starts to look weak and then where the hair looks healthy. And the reason for the biopsy would be to see if there's any actual active inflammation going on. Because if there is active inflammation, that gets treated usually with medical therapy, such as sometimes steroids. If there is no active inflammation, then she could be a candidate for a hair transplant should she ever want one in the future. We actually did a live hair transplant on the channel for a patient who on the left side of his temple was born with a patch of missing hair. And we did a hair transplant to try to get him to look more symmetrical from one side to the other. He lived that way without hair in that specific region for pretty much his whole life, and then one day wanted to make the change so that it would look more like the other side. So in JoJo's case, you can't just jump into a hair transplant. You need to do the proper legwork to figure out if she is even a candidate, and that sometimes requires a biopsy. One other consideration as a cause of potential hair loss in JoJo Siwa is androgenic alopecia. That is the most common form of hair loss in men and women. However, given JoJo's age at only 19, and also the fact that the hair loss is very concentrated to one portion of her scalp, I'm thinking that it's likely not androgenic alopecia. In women with androgenic alopecia, it usually presents with central thinning of the scalp that over time widens. That's the typical pattern, and there's a preservation of hair right at the hairline. And so it's a very different type of pattern than what I'm seeing with JoJo's case. So I don't think that she has androgenic alopecia, which again is the most common type of hair loss in men and women. So as you may know, I have alopecia areata, which is an autoimmune type of hair loss. So I can definitely relate to you, JoJo. If you have any questions about your hair loss over time, if you need any advice, feel free to reach out to the practice. Be happy to help you.